Hi, Erin.
Hi, how's it going?
Great. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. So I believe we're live now. And hi, everybody out there. We have a huge show, I know. And we've been trying to fix it for about 10 minutes. And I think when I mute myself and the ladies start talking, it'll be a lot better. So I apologize for this. We're just going to have to go with it for a minute. And I see a lot of you are commenting on it. And my apologies. So my name is Heather Russell. I am a program coordinator for Challenge America. And we run also the Military Sisterhood Initiative. And we hope everybody's staying happy and healthy and safe out there. Before I introduce our guests, I would just like to tell you a couple of housekeeping things and give you some format. And I know it's really hard to hear. So I appreciate your patience. On the far right bottom is something you'll see. Say something nice. This is where you want to post your comments, just your general comments. And we will be posting some great resources for you here as well. I'm going to post more about Military Sisterhood Initiative and Challenge America, so you can learn more there. And in an interest in trying to get to the interview, have the ladies have more time to talk. I'm not going to talk about their experiences and give you their photos, but I am going to post them in comments for you. Okay. And then you'll see the Ask a Question button at the bottom. It's about in the middle. And this is where you will ask questions for the ladies, for the guests themselves. Okay. What else do I have for you? I think that's it. I just need to invite our amazing host into the event. And I'm not seeing her yet. I see somebody asked if I have two devices on in the room, and I don't. Thank you for that. Any other suggestions are welcome.
We've been working on it for like 20 minutes, so if you have something, please.
And not sure what happened to Cherissa.
I can share a text. Oh, so she's rebooting.
Okay. We'll give me some time to look at this a little bit more.
It's one of the wonderful challenges that we're all facing in this new and different time.
It is.
Hey Sherman, thanks for the question. Mom's great. I think she's on a cast, so I'm sure she'd love to hear from you.
D says, am I blurry? Or is it both of us? And how is Erin's voice? That's the most important. Okay, good.
Hey, Grub, I see you there.
If you're just joining us, we're waiting for our host to come back. And we know we have a big echo on my end. And I'm going to pop off, so it'll be much better.
No, Sherman, I cannot sing. No one wants that, I assure you. Everyone would log off immediately. And you don't want me to sing cadence either, it's worse. Hey, Ma. Thanks, Grub. Right, Dee? There's no right location for me to do that. I assure you. My drill instructors were great at it, but not me.
Okay, Cherissa's here.
Oh, awesome.
All right. Cherissa, our host, is here. Hi.
Hey. But the echo is on your end.
I know. I'm going to pop off. I've already introduced myself. I'm going to let you take it from here. And I would like to come back at the end and ask questions. But it might be best if you just at the end look at the questions and we'll have them lined up for you.
Yeah, because if the echo,
Okay,
so we're taking it up more. So you've already introduced Erin and myself, or where are we at?
Just introduce Erin if you would, and take it from there. I'm going to post your bios in the comments so they'll see those. Okay, so you can just take it away.
Sure. Hey.
Hi there.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I'm sorry for the lateness. We had a little difficulties. I think it's because we have such a brilliant, spectacular speaker today. But I want you guys to compare with us here. I see Celeste saying so have a go. What I'll do is I'll turn my volume down a little bit while the tech and trying to listen that for. I don't want to delay you guys. And I feel like I feel and I don't want to have you guys waiting. So I appreciate it. So our guest today is none other than Erin Cobb. But before we get into her story, I think everyone knows why this interview series was created. It's called Who's at the Table? Only because so often women veterans are forgotten when it's time for us to be in big meetings. And I want that to stop. I feel as though we have such great abilities and attributes and characteristics that deserve to be in those boardrooms, having those important conversations and be a part of those decision making. But people won't know that we have those capabilities unless they know that we want to be at the table because we deserve to be there. So that's the purpose of this entire series, is to shout out to the world. We deserve to be at the table. And my idea is to bring spectacular speakers like Erin, so all women veterans and veterans out here can know that there is triumph and there's success after challenges. And so, Erin, thank you so much for being here today. I wish we didn't have the COVID because I would want to hug you and you and I would be besties if we didn't have to go through this COVID pandemic. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited we finally got to do this. I know we were supposed to do this a month and a half ago, so thank you so much. I'm glad we were able to work it out.
Awesome. And it's such a pleasure to just have our participants just hear about who you are and your story. But before we get into that, why do you think you deserve to even be at this table? Why do you think that when you walk into a room and you know that it's all about just basic decision making, what makes you feel as though you deserve to be at that table?
That's a really great question. And first of all, I don't walk in the room these days. I roll in the room. I am paralyzed, and I'll tell you guys all my story in a little bit. But I think I think women's voices are very important to be heard. But I also have a responsibility now to speak for the disabled community. And one of the things, I've always been I've always been the type of person to be heard. I've always been the type of person to try to speak up for other people, but now it's even more important for people to be able to see me and to make sure that I make myself visible and that I speak up, because it's easy for people to try to, especially when you look different than everyone else, as many people have those experiences, to dismiss that. And so it's just extra important for me to be heard.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you taking that stand, because a lot of veterans, women veterans in particular, they kind of shell themselves, and they kind of, go into their own space and feel like they're not important, and they don't have that validation to be able to stand up like you do. So I appreciate the fact that you're strong enough and you're confident enough to be able to say, this is who I am, take me as I am, and you're able to roll with that. So I really appreciate that. And that's encouraging to us to know that even with you, with your disability, you're able to say, I'm still here and I deserve to be here. So let's get into your story, because it's so powerful about why you're here right now. Like you just said, you're paralyzed. You didn't come out of your mama's womb paralyzed, so you had to get here somehow. So let's get into your story, and how did this all happen?
Sure. It's a long, convoluted story. There's I'll just give some trigger warnings for people. There's some domestic violence and there's suicide involved. So just wanted to go ahead and let you know that that's involved in there. It's kind of hard to decide where to start. But I will say, I joined the Marine Corps. I went to boot camp in 2003. So obviously after 9/11, we invaded Iraq while we were there, which our drill instructors loved to torture us with. That was their favorite. With the very real understanding that the deployment was on the horizon. We declared the war won before I graduated. But I went on to combat training and onto my MOS school. And I will say I learned a lot of really important lessons in the Marine Corps. They probably taught me the real hard knocks of life. And that's my dog, everyone. That's Duke. Someone's delivering something, so I apologize. Hey, sir, this is not about you. Anyway, no, but it was a very different experience for me. I grew up in a predominantly white middle class upbringing. The world was very fair. I didn't realize I would say for the most part, like, you understand that there's that people are treated differently in the world, and that there's that not everybody has the same experience, but you don't think about, like, kind of outside of your own bubble.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps was the first time where I ever felt like a minority. Obviously not the same experience as everyone else, but the Marine Corps, there are very few women. Yeah. And it's a tough lesson to learn. And my whole life had been a sisterhood. I played sports. I was in a sorority. I had a very strong female network, and it kind of changes your perspective on things. And you learn, some hard lessons. I will say it's also some of the greatest lessons, because I really got to learn about other people and their lives and their experiences, and everything. It's not the same for everybody as it was for a little middle class white girl growing up where I did. Yeah. So, I'm thankful for that. So, but those lessons were kind of, upset my naive, in a way, view of the world. So, you fast forward, I finally got to my unit, so I was a reservist. And in that, I got to go back to college. And I will say a reserve unit is very different than the fleet, in that everybody goes back to their normal lives. So this strange relationship with women isn't really as affected there, because they're around their wives, their girlfriends, women all day, every day. So it's a bit different. So I found out at the end of 2004, that I'd be deployed in 2005. So we took a wonderful trip across the pond. We called it spring break. And while I was over there, obviously it's the most terrifying experience of my life. I would like to pretend that I was a superhero and I saved the world. We do whatever jobs we're given. Mm-hmm. Most of our jobs were on the base. We were in Asad. For the most part, I stayed on the base. I did a few convoys, but we got mortared all the time. And you're very shaped by your experience. And within that time that I was there, I met someone, and I think some of the other experiences I had, you kind of also understand in the back of your mind, if you ally yourself with an alpha male personality, that is more helpful to your experience as a woman in that environment. And so I met someone while I was over there, and when we came home, we were still together. And he was an EOD tech, so he disarmed bombs, IEDs. It's kind of like, cool superstar even in the military. And when we got home, he turned around and went, on his next deployment. And we got engaged before he left. It was kind of the whirlwind thing. And one of the things that you learn, anybody in the military, is mission accomplishment is the most important thing. And so when he deployed, he was very jealous, and he gave me a hard time about who I was with and who I spent time with. But in my mind, the most important thing was, troop welfare, mission accomplishment. He was disarming bombs and IEDs. Like, he didn't need to worry about the things that were going on back home. And I also felt like a commitment to him because I was a Marine, and because we met in this really, really crazy circumstance. And it was really difficult to me that, when I first came home, as a reservist, you don't get to go back to all the people that you were deployed with. You come home, you feel disconnected to your family, you feel disconnected from your friends, and you're supposed to go back to a normal life and go back to college like nothing ever happened. And so the person I felt the most connected to was gone, and I had lost a sense of self, plus, all the things that you're trying to do to, enter back into normal society. So, during his deployment, and my mom's on the call, if she can vouch, we had a really tough time. He was super jealous. He was very controlling, but I just put it to the fact that he was away and he didn't understand. And most importantly, I wanted him to get home alive. And so for my part in that, it was to be as agreeable as possible, understand the situation for what it was, and kind of move forward. So he came home from his deployment. We continued with our relationship. We were already engaged. And then he got out of the Marine Corps in 2007, and we got married, in between him leaving the Marine Corps and joining the police department. So we never really even lived in the same area. And kind of over the progression of our marriage, I will say he certainly had his own demons. He had a ton of PTSD. He had a rough life growing up. I was, when I looked at him, I was always, it's like many situations, you're able to explain away the behavior. I recognized that, he didn't grow up the same way that I did, that he lost more people than I did, that, his life was much different than my own. And I continue to explain that away. And as these things go, it got progressively worse. He got more and more controlling. And it wasn't, one of the things is most people think when you have domestic violence or domestic abuse in a relationship, it's someone, physically assaulting someone else. And there wasn't that there. And you think of someone who is very demeaning or certain things, and they're abusive in their language. Well, it was very nuanced. It wasn't in that way. It was, no one will ever love you the way that I love you. I act like this because I love you so much. I do this because I care about you. I just love you so much, blah, 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 blah. And, in the cycle of violence or abuse, you have this point of escalation, you have the peak of whatever the incident is, and then it gets better, and they feel, and they're sorry and they're apologetic, and you go through this. And over time, it just got worse. We split up. A year into our marriage, we separated, but his behavior became very, very, very erratic. And he would show up at places where I was. And it continued. He would embarrass me. He would do that. And we ended up getting back together. And, most people, even especially in the South, if you're trying to make your marriage work, everybody supports it. That's, they no one's going to look at it. They're also proud of you for trying to make it work. Yep. And so when we got back together, very quickly into it, I realized that I was making a mistake. But I knew in my mind, if we lived in the same place, there's no way we'd ever be able to split up. It just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. He wasn't going to allow it. And so I will say one thing that I liked in the beginning that became something that I did not like anymore is he was the most resourceful person I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, if he wanted something to make it happen, he was tenacious. When he was focused, he could make anything happen. And he was, he was charming and he was engaging. And so, the guy that everybody loved, the saying. So this continued on, for a period of time. And eventually he ended up taking a job down in Alabama. And so when he moved to Alabama, I finally felt like he was far enough away that it was time and we could make our separation. And all sorts of escalating behavior. Later, I mean, he was, it was very interesting because he would end up in North Carolina and show up at places where I was, and he would always know where I was, and I couldn't understand. I mean, he lived like 8 hours away. Yeah. And so it became I wasn't frightened in that I thought he was going to hurt me. I was frightened in that I thought that he would embarrass me. And that was more because he knew if he'd ever hit me, if he'd ever done that, he knew that wasn't going to work. That wasn't his method. That wasn't the point. So it continued to escalate, and he would show up at my house, which I didn't understand. He lived so far away. And so around 2011, I mean, I even had a Davidson police officer in North Carolina reach out to him and basically tell him to back off. And he didn't. And this continued. And as much as I say this is a terrible joke, I used to tell people on Fridays when I would leave for work, they knew kind of what I was going through. I'm like, well, if I don't show up on Monday, it means Jeremy killed me. And so, this continued for a period of time. So September 24th, 2011, my mom was down visiting. I'd gone to bed. I had CrossFit the next day. And I woke up at 2:00 in the morning. He was in my room in my house. I'm not sure how he got in. And so, it was one of those things. It was kind of, had expected his behavior. And so I woke up, I went outside, I ventured outside. I said, look, my mom's here. We're not going to do this inside. And my mom woke up and she told him that he needed to leave. And I was like, Mom, it's fine. I was kind of used to this behavior. Went outside to talk on the front porch. And it wasn't a really heated argument. It was just back and forth, asking me, he found out I was dating somebody. And we weren't screaming, but, it was late. And my mom reached her head out. She said, Erin, you really need to come in. I said, Mom, just 1 minute. We'll be fine. And he made some sort of comment. And I said, look, we both deserve to be happy. So let's just do that. And he said something, and I don't remember what it was. And he pulled out a gun, and he shot me twice. And then he turned the gun on himself. And by luck, fate, whatever you believe in, my mom happened to be there. She came out, apparently. I mean, I was in and out of consciousness, but she drug me in the foyer. And the only thing I remember is her leaning over me, screaming in my face. She said, you can't leave me. You can't leave me, Erin. You can't leave me. And I'm so, so lucky that she was there. She held my carotid artery shut. Essentially, yeah, she's the best. She's amazing. She doesn't feel any pressure. She has no medical training. She's just awesome. Until the paramedics got there. And so, I remember most of what happened. I remember being in the ambulance and the paramedic talking to me, asking me if I could feel my legs. And I don't know I'm sure I was in a collar. I'm not sure, but I knew at that point I kind of filed it away that I couldn't. And the first thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. I couldn't talk. I was intubated. I will say this: if someone's ever going to shoot you, I hope that they aren't good at it, because the grouping was excellent. One bullet in the carotid artery, and the other went in behind my jaw and out through my mouth. So I was intubated in all kinds of ways: collapsed lung, broken jaw, missing teeth. It was not pretty. But my first question to my mom was, I said, is he dead? And she told me, she shook her head yes. And I said, I'm free. And that was something that took me a long time to reconcile in my head. So, continuing forward, no one let me see a mirror. And they all told me that it wasn't so bad. They were not telling the truth. I looked like Quasimodo. And I would say one of the hardest things for me, I went through this, I was a Marine, I was an athlete, I was a CrossFitter. I took tremendous pride in my body. I was paralyzed, and the worst thing was the first time I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize my own face. I didn't know who that was. I could look in the mirror and not know who the person was staring back at me. And it was a very, very long time until I could recognize my own face. And that was really, really, that was one of the hardest things. It was a year before I got teeth, which you can see I do have now.
Yes, you do, and they're beautiful.
Thank you. But the trauma was just so severe. They couldn't work on it. And I had terrible secondary complications. I almost died several times afterwards. I got a terrible pressure sore. That basically my body was cannibalizing itself because I was just so weak. It was so terrible. I'm very, very lucky in that we got involved with the Reef Foundation. Bernadette Morrow, I know she's there.
Yeah, I see her.
Yeah, she is. Helped me get in contact with the Shepherd Center, and I went to the Shepherd Center, and they were able to do surgery and to go through rehab again. And if it weren't for that, I would have died. There's no question. This isn't hyperbole. I would have died. I was at the end, and I didn't want to live anymore. I was so miserable. I would sweat all the time because my body was in so much pain. It was horrible, and I couldn't move without passing out. So after I went through that, I came back a year later for some more intensive therapy. And because of that, I was able to go back to work and kind of restart my life again.
Your story is incredible. And thank you for doing that caveat, because there are a lot of women here that, may have experienced domestic violence, PTSD. And so for those women that, if this story triggered you, make sure you get help. Put a comment in the comment box and we'll make sure we reach out to you. So thanks, Erin, for sharing your story. But let me tell you, to have experienced what you did, domestic violence, PTSD, war, being a Marine, the physicality of who you are. I think you were not only a CrossFitter, but weren't you doing some bodybuilding or fitness competition or something? What did you say here?
Yeah, I did figure competitions for a little bit too.
So you're talking about a disciplined person, someone who is a Marine, and you got connected with a guy that in turn wanted to take your life because he couldn't control you anymore. And what were your initial thoughts when you woke up, when you said to your mom, is he alive? And you realized that he was dead, that you said that you felt you were free. What was that free you were talking about? Was it the freedom to be, without him and him not stalking you? Or was it the freedom to say that now I can live?
It was all of that. And I'm sure a lot of women can speak to this. If you've ever been in an abusive relationship, you don't realize how much it consumes every bit of you until you're out of it. And even now, it took years for me to recognize that it was all consuming. You look back and you wonder how you ever survived something like that. But I knew that I was free. My friends were free. He was the type of person, he, like I said, he's tenacious. He left no stone unturned. If I was dating a guy, he was harassing the guy. If my friends, if he felt like people were too close to me, he harassed my friends. And so it was everything. It was for me to go and live my life and be able to love and to be and to exist and not have this horrible cloud hanging over everything I do. When I was with people, I'm like, don't take pictures of me. Don't tell anybody where I am, and it was a horrible way to live. He would call me, no joke, 20 or 30 or 40 times at work. They changed my phone number at work because he wouldn't leave me alone.
Wow.
It was
wow. Well, I think God, because had she not been there that night, there's no telling what would have happened. And for her to know how to hold a carotid artery, and me as a nurse, and to hold that amount of pressure in order to keep you alive, kudos to Miss Janet. We're giving her an inaugural nursing degree. She's now a BSN in nursing for that. But thank God for her, because for her to know that you were experiencing what you experienced because, of course, you shared your thoughts with your mom about your relationship. And for her to know that there was something not right, for her to call you into the house, but you wanted to finish the conversation to kind of diffuse him. And for her to react the way that she did, it's that mother's love. And for her to be able to be there to save your life, but also witness what he did to you. I mean, I can only imagine how she's had to cope with that. And what did you say was some of the things that was going through her mind when she had to hold her baby girl and hold your carotid artery to save your life after this guy shot you twice?
Look, she is the freaking best. I've had so many doctors and nurses say that they freeze when it's their own kids. And she just yelled at me. She said, "You can't leave me, Erin. You can't leave me." I mean, I'm an only child, and my mom and I are very, very close. And she was amazing. I mean, look, you want someone in a crisis. You want Janet in a crisis. She is freaking amazing.
Miss Janet knows how to respond, right? Miss Janet knows how to work under pressure, right? She's a true first responder, right?
Right?
So let's talk about his behavior. Did you come back with PTSD as well, Erin?
I did, and it's so funny that you don't realize that that's what it is.
Okay.
You know, it's the small things at first, of course, like you're on, you know, when we got back to Camp Lejeune and they're doing artillery exercises and everybody's, you know, trying to drop down. So it's things like that. But what you don't realize, it's more your ability to connect with the people that you love and trust that it's there. And I have always had a ridiculous sense of foreboding. You know, there's people that say they have premonitions before they get on an airplane, where I'd never fly anywhere because the plane's gonna crash every time that I get on there. So it's not an appropriate thing. But it's that, and it's the loss, especially through him, because he was an EOD tech. You know, his friends were dying all the time. People that he knew and people that he cared about and people that I'd met. So it's that sense of loss and that connection, and not feeling like, you know, you can, the people in your life, as much as they love you, that they even know that they can't know your experience. I think, you know, that was the hardest part for me. And just that sense that death is around the corner all the time.
Yeah. And did you think that with him that night when he talked to you, since you kind of had that intuition about, you know, things happening, like you said, the foreshadowing, the foreboding of things? Did you sense that night when he came to your house that this could be it and he was going to do harm to you?
I had to have known somewhere in the back of my mind, like, you don't come up with telling your coworkers on Fridays, if I don't show up for work on Monday, it's because someone has killed me. Yeah. But truly, in the back of my mind, I was more afraid for the people around me. I didn't think he would ever hurt me. Embarrass me? Yes. Make me feel bad? Yes. Drive me crazy? Yes. But hurt someone around me? For sure. But actually hurting me, it didn't even occur to me. Because when you're in an abusive relationship, you spend all your time managing someone else. So you think you've gotten good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're spot on with that. And I think a lot of women veterans here in the forum probably can relate to that. And I know for myself, as someone who experienced domestic violence, but the physicality of it, you know, I dealt with the black eyes and the scratches and things of that nature. And you're right. You're so consumed trying to contain that person so it doesn't escalate to that next level, that you don't think, okay, this person actually is going to take my life, because you kind of mastered how to contain them. And in so many ways, we don't have that ability to know what's going on in that other person's head, because though we're containing them, at least we think, they still may have their own agenda. And that night, his agenda was to, for whatever reason, you know, take you out. And that's very unfortunate. And I had that similar experience with a significant other of mine. I didn't know he would go to that extent, but it did escalate, and I felt my life was in danger. And it took me having to fight him off in order to be like, look, this is it. I can't do this. And like you know, kill me, or, you know, let's part ways. And I'm here to say that he didn't kill me, and I'm glad, but I had to find that inner strength to not be like, I'm gonna contain him so that I could live my best life, because I was miserable and it was a horrible way to live. So I say that to say to you, when you were going through this, you guys went through this for years. Did you ask for help? Did you go to counseling? Did you go and, besides talk to your friends, did you try and get him some help because he was suffering a lot from the PTSD along with you?
Yeah. Yes. So we actually went to counseling separately earlier in our relationship, and I had a pretty good relationship with my therapist, who I actually started seeing again after all of this happened. And he went to go see a therapist. But for him, I mean, a person like that, when someone tells you something you don't want to hear, they're going to stop because they don't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. He was actually 90% disabled with PTSD from the military. And one of the things I'm very, through the VA, I mean, so one of the things that was very frustrating for me is I knew he wasn't taking his meds. They thought that he was disabled enough that, they were paying him for it. So I think that's in one way that the VA, that they failed him and failed me. So yeah, there was that. But also, even when he was down in Alabama, I tried to get in contact with sort of one of the domestic violence type helplines we have around here. And essentially what they told me was, he lives in Alabama. There's nothing that they don't have any sort of partnership agreements or any, whatever you want to call it, with Alabama. So they wouldn't serve him a restraining order in Alabama. They had to know where he was in North Carolina and doing it here. And what I was most worried about is he worked as a government contractor, and he had to have a top secret clearance. I knew that if that happened, they would take his top secret clearance away. And if they did that, he would have nothing to lose. Yeah. And you all know that's the same thing with restraining orders. Restraining orders, while I understand the purpose of them, they often escalate the behavior in such a way that makes it much, much more dangerous. I mean, we all know the most dangerous time for a woman is when anyone, whenever they leave. And I think that night he actually finally believed, even though we were divorced, that it was done. Yeah. So I think that's what finally tipped the edges. But I mean, that's the most dangerous time. So yes, you essentially ask for help, but it's like, what are you going to do? Yeah. And so you also talked about suicide. Was there an incident or a period in your journey that you felt as though suicide was the way out? I will say when I was first injured, obviously it was a lot. One, I look like Quasimodo. Two, you think your identity is a certain thing, right? And for me, I'd always been very embodied, very tough, very, everything was about not just the way that I looked, but the way my body performed. I'm the type of person that I knew that if I challenged myself physically, I could do it. Yeah. And you also think that that's your value. You think the way that you look is more of your value than honestly it really is. Yeah. And that is just, I couldn't believe it. Plus all the things that go along with being paralyzed, it's not an easy life. For me, I'm a T2. My autonomic system doesn't work. I'm cold all the time. I don't even have abs. It's harder to breathe. I can't cough. There's all these things. And, when you're sitting in the hospital and you can't even, I have to have lung respiratory treatments every couple of hours so I don't get pneumonia. This is not a good way to go, and you don't see an end in sight. I will say most people may have a hard time hearing this, but the most helpful thing at that point was my dad, and we have a great relationship, and he understands kind of how my brain works. And he said, Erin, give it a year. Please just give it a year. If in a year you still don't want to do this, I will take care of it. And I know for a lot of people that sounds harsh, but it was actually what I needed to hear, because it gave me a point. It gave me a deadline. It gave me something to just get through. And at that year mark, the hardest part was, you can say a week ago I could run. A week ago I could do this. Yeah. But when I could say a year ago, I couldn't even sit up on my own. That you look at that, and that's, time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does make things a lot better. Yeah. And so, and there are also, there were definitely dark times when I was so sick and when I had that pressure sore and I could barely stay conscious. there were times where I'm like, I can't live like this. I can't do this.
Yeah.
But I will say I've done a lot of wrong things in my life, but one of the things I haven't done wrong is pick the people in it, -1. And I have the best friends that you could ever ask for. I have an amazing family. I have, an amazing guy in my life. I mean, I really, truly, I have the best people. I mean, they are amazing. You want to talk about going above and beyond the Call of Duty. I mean, and it was frustrating, and it still gets, it's better now. It was frustrating at times because, I was the fixer, and I was the one, I was everybody's boyfriend. I was the one who moved heavy things. I was the emotional support system, and I squished the spiders. So that was really hard for me to accept that in my life. But, I'm just so fortunate to have people that stepped in, and they never made me feel like I was less than, and they were grateful and gracious and amazing. And so there were times where it was frustrating because I felt like I was living for them because I didn't want to do it. But you know what? Sometimes that's what you need to get through the day.
Absolutely. And so I'm hearing your story, and I'm almost feeling like at some point in your life or your journey, you had to grieve the Erin before the incident, right? Because you can never get that Erin back, right? And so how did you grieve her in order to get where you are today, when you're living in happiness, you're content with your situation? You're not going to have great days every day, but you're able to say, I remember that girl back then, but this is who I am now. How have you grieved her, and where are you now?
Oh, that has been a hell of a process. I still do it sometimes. I spoke, we're going to talk about Bernadette a lot. But one of the things she talks about is, when you live in the past and you go over a situation over and over, she calls it mental masturbation, and it's not helpful. And I still do that sometimes. I'll jump on Facebook and I'll look at old pictures of me, and I get sad. I see girls with their long legs and their short shorts, and I look at my skinny little twigs and I get a little angry. But for the most part, it's a process. And for me, part of it was starting to lift weights again and put on a little bit of muscle, at least in my upper body, because that's kind of how I've, part of my identity and who I am. But, at some point, going back to work was a big part of it. At some point in your life, no matter who you are, you get older, things get saggier, you can have kids, things aren't as tight as they used to be, you're not as good, as fast, or as whatever as you once were. Yeah. Someone wrote a song about that. Yeah. But you just have to get over yourself. And that was the big thing about going back to work. It was hard because there were people there who knew me before and didn't know me afterwards. But there were also people there who never knew me when I was, 5'7" and wore heels and looked like I was 6 feet tall. And you get through that and you challenge yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. And once I felt fulfilled from having a job, and you take stock of your life and you talk to people that you've known, and you look around and you realize, yeah, it was fun. Yes, it was great being athletic and all these things, but the core of who you are doesn't change. And, as much as I used to think that I was a little more hateful and a little bitchier than I was, apparently I was a lot nicer than I thought. But you take stock and you look around, and I can't be miserable. I don't have it in me. I'm just not one of those people. So I can either, since I wasn't going to actively pursue the alternative, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to be happy. And there's a lot to be happy about. Like, every day is not easy, but every day is not easy for anyone. So what am I going to do? Make everybody else miserable? No.
So
I don't take myself that seriously.
What would you say about your new self? This is the new Erin. You're having to adapt. You're having to overcome your challenges. What do you think of the new Erin?
She's considerably more patient. And I've always been a pretty empathetic person, but I'm so much less quick to anger about small things. It's just not worth it. and I realize, I mean, especially when people are being nasty or being jerks, I look around and you get to know people. And one of the great and positive things of this experience is with me being in a wheelchair and people looking at me, I get to know people on a human level. And I've always been good at connecting with people, but there's a whole barrier that's not there before, you know, and people tend to be much more real, and I appreciate that. I get to know them on a different kind of level, and they you know, they drop their barriers, they drop their guard, and you get to see people for who they are, and it's really a kind of amazing thing. And so, you know, that, I mean, that experience, I never would have, I don't think that I ever would have had that before, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. So would you say you had regret to look back on your life and your situation? Do you have any regrets or anything you would have redo or do a redo on in any part of your journey?
Well, I mean, obviously, if I had the choice, being in a wheelchair is hard. Being a life of a disabled person is not easy. The world is not accessible, and it's very, very tough. And in the beginning, it was very, very tough for me to accept, you know, people looking at me with, you know, not necessarily I'm less than, but that they felt sorry for me. Now I don't really care. I just laugh. I'm like, you don't know anything about me. You probably, I mean, if you want to look at me and you want to hold the door for me and feel like, you know, you've done a service to the world, thank you. Open the door for me. It's fine. I mean, obviously, part of me says I would not have, I would not like to have been shot. I would not like to have been in this position. I don't know if it could have ever been avoided. I don't think that he would have been willing to give up. I guess, you know, it's kind of a shitty thing to say, but if he would have just addressed his own issues and left me out of it, that would have been nice. But here, I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter. I'm almost 9 years down the line. I have a life that I'm proud of. I have a partner that I love. I have friends that are amazing. I have a good life. So, and my life, you know, life happens however it does. And I'm not going to be one of those people that says everything happens for a reason, because I think that's a cop out and makes people who've gone through some really terrible things, it diminishes their experience. But, you know, I'm in a good place. I'm fine. I'm happy. So what are you going to do?
Found a way to get through your circumstances and just move on. And it seems like you found that formula for happiness, which is awesome. And so we're going to do kind of like a rapid fire fill in the blank drill here, because your story is so impactful and it has a lot of dimensions to it. But there are a lot of women here in the forum that want to probably get to know you a little bit more. So that's what this rapid fire is going to do. Okay. So the first question is, my life without the military would have been
empty, smaller. You know, it opened me up to a world, you know, a world that I want to know, that people's experiences that I probably would never been able to been witness to.
Wow. My biggest motivation or motivator in life is?
Probably my mom. I would have to say I've spent my whole life trying to meet the expectations or dreams or whatever of my mom, because she's amazing.
That's your angel. Survival is?
Life. I mean, everybody's surviving. You know, some days surviving is just getting out of bed. You know, every day is a different thing. Everybody goes through trials. Everybody has tough times in life, but you know, every day is survival.
Okay. My life is worth.
Oh. Well, I have to say over $2 million, because that's how much it took to save me.
I didn't expect you were going to put a dollar value to it, but okay. Okay, we'll say it's worth $2 million. Okay, got it. My story is changing lives because
I'm willing to share it.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know, people, you know, it's easy to sit behind a keyboard and be, you know, to be nasty or whatever. But if you can get on a human level and meet people and share your experiences, everybody has a cool experience in life. And so, I mean, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And we appreciate you sharing it because not a lot of people feel like they can or they want to. So they need to hear stories like yours and others in who's at the table to be able to feel free and feel like they can and confidently tell their story. And people want to hear their story, right? And so in order to do that, we have to tell our women veterans that their stories matter, their lives matter. So we appreciate you being so honest with your story. Last fill in the blank is, what are 3 truths about yourself?
Oh, let's see. I have a really, really dark sense of humor. It's really inappropriate. I have a filthy mouth, and I absolutely love and adore people on an individual level. I love to hear their stories. I love to connect with them. I just, you know, I think people are incredibly interesting and amazing individually. As a group, they get to be stupid, but individually, I like them a great deal.
Well, your story is so empowering, is so inspiring. Before we get to the questions, because we have quite a few questions here, what message would you give to these women veterans that may be experiencing domestic violence? I know we're all here in this pandemic. We're hobnobbing with our significant others more so than we ever have been, and we maybe are experiencing some domestic violence or something similar to what you had to deal with. What message would you give to them so that they can feel empowered and encouraged to either get out of their situation, get the help that they need? What message would you give to those women?
You know, I would say that if you can find a way out of your situation, life is so amazing and worth it. You don't deserve to be there. It's not your fault. I recognize I was lucky. I've been lucky in so many ways. I've had a tremendous support system in my life. I've had resources, but there are resources out there. There are groups willing to help you. It is worth it. It is worth not living under that umbrella of fear, you know, every single day, every minute of your life.
And what gets you up every day?
Wow. Let's see.
Besides your dog.
It really does. He's so adorable. I just, it is in my nature. I have to feel like I can contribute in some way. And so that's, you know, that motivates me. That's important to me, whether it's my job or trying to volunteer or be, you know, there for my friends or the people in my life. Like it's important in my very nature to just be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that I consider you and your story to be such a spectacular example for women veterans. And I think you're so deserving of the title of a superwoman. And I have the honor right now of actually wearing a I Am Superwoman t-shirt. And this t-shirt was actually sent to me by a organization called Heroes United. They are a major supporter of a lot of work that I do. And they read your bio, heard about this series, and they wanted to support us today by giving me a few of these t-shirts. And you will be one of the first recipients of this t-shirt. So I Am Superwoman t-shirt for you from Heroes United. They're out of Utah, and they wanted to let you know that you are truly a superwoman. Keep doing the work that you're doing. Keep inspiring not only women veterans, but anybody that you talk to. So I will be sending you your wonderful t-shirt as well as your keychain that says you are a superwoman. So I just wanted to make sure I announced that before we got to those questions. but you truly are a inspiring individual, a superwoman, and wear this S proudly when you get this t-shirt. I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you to Shearers United. That's awesome.
Okay, let's get to your questions because people keep chiming in here. Okay, so here's the first question, Erin. Did you experience as a CrossFit athlete helping your recovery?
Yes, 100%. So, well, prior to, but I would say that things had gotten so bad in my life. This was right before the shooting. That time that I was there was the only time my brain turned off. It was the only time that that I could have an hour without having to deal with any of that. And I will say my CrossFit box were super, super supportive during and after. They did some fundraisers for me, and they're really, really incredible people. I mean, CrossFit truly is a community, and I think they do some really amazing things.
Awesome. Okay, the next question. How did you rebuild your mental and emotional health after the attempt on your life?
Oh, took time. It was one day at a time. For me, part of it was, when I was able to actually go to a good rehab facility after I had my flap surgery, part of it was building muscle and feeling more in control of my body. I did a ton of therapy. I'm a huge, huge, huge believer in talk therapy. I know there's all kinds of different therapies out there, but I definitely spent a lot of time, talking to therapists, and I think that's really important. And it takes time.
Yep.
Lots of time.
Where did you find yourself finding value and worth now?
Oh, wow. So, I mean, part of it is, I think there's acts of service. Also, I mean, for me, going back to work was the most important thing. I'm my mother's and father's child in that, you work, work is very important. You dedicate your time, more time than any of us probably should, and mental and emotional energy to that. But I mean, there's that. And then I do some work with the Reeve Foundation. They're an amazing organization. If anybody has someone who's suffered spinal cord injury, paralysis, they're incredible. And then I've also done some stuff for CDMRP, which are essentially grant reviews for different types of spinal cord treatment. So.
Awesome. And so the next question is, were there emotional support resources that helped you through?
Oh, the people in my life were my emotional support resources. It was really tough. I had a lot of outpouring from a lot of friends all over the place, but basically like my core group of girlfriends, and my partner, my boyfriend now, Phil. They were there for me every second of every day. Anytime I needed anything, they would be willing to talk me out of panic attacks or just be there for me. They loved me. They supported me. They never, they would drag me out of the house. If I was too weak to do something, one of my friends would pick me up and throw me in her SUV and made sure I was out and about in the world.
What would you say was the most important support you had?
I mean, the people in my life. I can't reiterate that enough. I mean, they were just, they're amazing. I could not ask for better people in my life.
Awesome. So those are all of the questions that came up here. Erin, can you see the comments on the right-hand side? Is there anyone you want to comment to in the comment box before we close? We had a lot of comments, and I wanted to make sure we give shout outs to Miss Bernadette over there, and Miss Janet, and Sherman Gillums, and Ms. Linda Ari there, Ms. D. Thank you guys all for supporting us and coming into the chat and giving us big shout outs. And we see your comments. Serving is very fulfilling. You're talking my talk right now. Awesome. You're worth more than $2 million. Ms. Bernadette says always a little smart. ASS. They know you well there, Erin.
She's an incredible lady. So.
Awesome. So, this kind of concludes and wraps up our show. We've been talking for quite a long time, an hour. I don't want to go into people's private time and personal time, but it's truly an honor to finally get to talk to you one-on-one, hear your story. I'm truly inspired by your story. I'm sure the women here in this forum is truly inspired by your story. I want to say thank you again to Sheroes United for supporting this particular episode. I want to thank Challenge America, who is the creator of the MSI platform that we are using for women veterans out here. If you know other women veterans who can benefit from these types of interviews and talks and this forum, this MSI platform, please send them here to this MSI network. There's nothing like a sisterhood, and that's what MSI is all about. It's a sisterhood and provide mentorship to each other to encourage, inspire, and motivate each other. So Erin, I'm gonna let you take it out with one last comment to these women and to the people that came into the forum tonight. One last message from you.
Sure. First of all, thank you. You guys are all incredible. I appreciate you taking your time. And I guess I would have to say, my last comment is, no matter what happens in your life, it's worth it.
Yep. And I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that your story will continue to inspire, encourage, and motivate people along the way. Do you have any social media links you want to give the people? Do you have a book coming up? Do you have events that you're doing? Last minute social media takes. Any people you want to shout out to? This is your time.
Thank you so much. Well, I need to write a book. I've been being harassed about writing a book, so I'm working through that cathartic process. I don't have anything exciting except I would say the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, the Paralysis Resource Center, and the Military Veterans Program they have is really incredible. The Shepherd Center, they helped save my life. They're really amazing. Thank you to all the wonderful people in my life. You're the best. I would not be here without you. You can look me up on social media, Erin Cobb. There's not really anything life-changing there, but I have cute pictures of my dog and my niece.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thank you all that came and registered for this episode. Please share to other people out there. Let them know what we're doing. We will showcase our next speaker, who will be in 2 weeks. We will certainly put that out on social media so you guys see who's the next one will be at the table. So until then, you guys be safe. Thank you for coming into the platform. Thank you, Erin. Continue to be inspiring. Continue to be uplifting. You are amazing today. God bless you. God bless Miss Janet for her being your angel here on earth, and continue to grow and glow is what I call it, and be a blessing to other people.
Thanks.
All right. And if you want to come on,